Okay, so today's show I'm going to leap into a couple of different topics, one of which is reading material. I don't know about you, but when I became a parent, I was really curious about other people's experiences. I kind of wanted to hear my own feelings echoed in someone else's articulate way of putting it. And I think, and that's very different than reading about parenting as a, in terms of instruction or in terms of a philosophy, a way of thinking, right? I think that like when our children are younger, we become curious about different magazines and so forth, like, or we read, parents or parenting, or some of those subscriptions just come to us, you could be on some list from the hospital that you birthed at. And anyway, a lot of those magazines tend to be like, how to get your toddler to eat string beans kind of thing. While they have their place and they're certainly useful, I remember learning a couple of good tips from those magazines. They don't explore the more philosophical and emotional undercurrents of being a parent. So I was always looking for something like that, and this was before I actually started writing about my own experiences as a parent. So I was, sort of feeling around, seeing like, well, what's out there, what do other people have to say, and how do they say it? So one of the first books that I came across that really helped me with that was Mothers Who Think. And this was a collection of essays by different writers, some of whose names may be familiar to you, many who may not be. Some of them have written books or articles in other magazines that you might have seen. And I don't mean in parenting magazines. They might write for the New York Times or the New Yorker or the Utne Reader, different sort of alternative presses. So, so this book, Mothers Who Think, was just this collection of great essays, and it wasn't really contingent on like, it's a group of like the best writers in the country. No, it was just a group of mothers who think, writing different essays about their experiences becoming a mother, and many of them were hilarious. Many of them were heartbreaking and poignant, and really ran the gamut. So, and this was in connection with Salon.com, which is a website that a lot of people may be familiar with in terms of quality writing. So, so Mothers Who Think kind of started the ball rolling for me, and I just ate up like any kind of books like that, and that led me to Breeder, which is the same kind of thing. In fact, there's an overlap in the editors, Ariel Gore. And Breeder was really the same thing, but I think maybe a little bit edgier, if you could describe it that way. But anyway, I really enjoyed this kind of writing and this sort of shared experience of parenting, with everything that it comes with, the good, the bad, the self-doubt, the anguish that you go through sometimes, and just the plain out frustration that you can also feel as a parent. It's helpful to have those sentiments echoed by someone else, so so that you don't feel so alone or alienated in your experience. So I was thinking at one point, I'm like, what, I just don't read any more magazines about parenting. I've let all those subscriptions lapse long ago. Even my favorite, Mothering, which was a very sort of holistic alternative style magazine, until I caught sight of this magazine, Brainchild. And Brainchild, the tagline is the magazine for thinking mothers. So what does that have in common Mothers Who Think, Thinking Mothers. So, you know, within this magazine, I found that same kind of comfort level that I had sought out in that collection of essays, which was a combination of parents who have something to say about parenting, and it's not all, you know, sort of like warm and fuzzy and you know, the picture of perfection. It's a lot about the different things that we deal with in being parents, and the questions that we have, and exploring the mistakes that we make. So I have quite a few issues here, and I've devoured pretty much all of them. Just wanted to show it again. You know, and these magazines are mostly essay style. There's like one big article, you know, that might be exploring one specific topic, and then there are like a series of essays that are very much subjective point of view stories about you know, something that a mom may be going through. And I'm trying to think of a great example of that in here. One of them is about a mom who is a recovering addict, heroin and alcohol. And she was clean long before her son was born, but she's going through these questions of like, what am I going to tell him? And when am I going to tell him? You know, that's a really heavy topic, and a lot of people can relate to that. So I was really curious to see about how she handled that. Then, you know, there was another story I loved about a mom who gets admitted accepted into med school, and what that was like for her. And that's, you know, I mean, not something I can personally relate to, but it's just a beautiful story about the sort of dichotomy of like being a mother and raising these like very alive and active children, and working on cadavers all day, you know, cutting them up as part of like her residency or whatever she's going through. Another one was about, you know, swearing in front of your kids, and or, you know, whether or not to have your child share your last name. You know, a lot of parents have different last names. That was more like a debate kind of thing. And then a really interesting article about a mom who, not in an urban area, you know, somewhere in the Midwest, I can't remember, but she dropped her children off at the mall without adult supervision. They had like a 11 and 12-year-old sort of minding the other younger children, and she gets arrested. Basically, it's just an intense story about, you know, and it's great to read something like that, because when you go into it thinking like, oh my God, I would never do that, and then you sort of get a sense of like, oh, she's an intelligent, thoughtful, caring mother, and she made this decision. There must be a good reason why, and you kind of explore it from that point of view. So it teaches you things, you know, kind of opens your eyes to different viewpoints, and that's what I like in a magazine, to be challenged. You know, not just like reading my favorite article to hate in Parents and Parenting magazine was the article of how to dress up your food so that your picky child will eat it, you know, by making like smiley faces out of the string beans and the peas. Oh, I mean, that kind of thing just puts me over the edge, you know. I mean, maybe there's a place for that in someone's life, but I find this kind of thing like I can sort of sink my teeth into it. So